back to the dark ages and had no internet for quite a while. I don't know how I survived. I may not have. That may explain the smell. But I am your perennial host, George Perrin, alongside the man, the myth, the talent, the typist, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, Travis?
I am fine and dandy. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the land of the living. Some people pay good money for that, by the way, what you just went through. They call it a digital detox.
It's one of those things on Facebook. So like, oh, would you give up the internet for 6 months here and earn $500,000? It's like, yes, I did that and I didn't get the money.
Ripped off. Yeah, I mean, even people in like on oil rigs and shit in the middle of the ocean have internet, but not the Yarra Valley. That's how we like to do it in Australia.
No, that's why their alcohol business is booming.
Yeah, but I mean, imagine. I understand though it was closed during lockdown, so that was a bit of a cruel joke.
Yeah, so it's like, oh yes, I'm literally opposite a winery that I can't go to or get any wine from.
Well, we are back.
The solace of alcohol, but now I have 4 pints. This episode brought to you by 4 pints.
Send us free shit, 4 pints.
Yes, 4 pints.
Really, we will.
4 pints.
Yeah. We have dozens of people who sometimes listen to the show who might consider buying your beer if they're in this country, which most of them aren't. But you know, we're nice guys. Yeah. It's going to be a packed show as a result, right?
It's a packed show because there's been shit to watch. There's been things to finish, and we've been able to actually go and experience the cinema again.
Oh, crazy. It's all crazy. I've been to the cinema twice since lockdown ended. And it is an interesting experience in Melbourne right now. In the sense you have maybe 800, 900,000 new cases of COVID a day. Or should I call it the unspecified virus of unknown origin? And, you know, so there's a very good chance that the person sitting behind you, well, there's a better chance than ever before the person sitting behind you in the theater has it. And,
you know, we're right on that precipice in Australia where we're about to hit the 90% double vaxxed thing. And restrictions are going to change again, apparently. And like when I went to the cinema, I presume it was the same for you. I had to prove that I had my double dose, and that's going to become even more stringent in other areas. Like I work in retail that's non-essential. We're going to be having to police that as well. But honestly, I love social distancing in the cinema. I really do.
I went to the Cinema Nova in Carlton to see Nitram, who I will give a little bit of a talk about later on. And there was none. There was no social distancing in the theater at all.
Really?
It was in theater the size of your living room, and literally, I'm not joking. There was you sit wherever the fuck you want. You know, no distancing. Just I think I didn't have to sit next. But I know when we opened up last year. I went and saw Tenet, and they were doing that at the theater I went to. But there was like nobody else within like 10 meters of me. I'm like, I fucking love the new world of cinema. Sure, cinema doesn't enjoy it very much, but what can you do? I'm just glad to be back and being able to see all the things that we were denied for so long, including 2 new Marvel products.
Yep.
A new James Bond. I think we haven't got it yet, but I mean Dune will be coming soon, and then we're getting the Venom as well is coming very soon, and not to mention the piece de resistance of all this, Spider-Man: No Way Home. I just saw the trailer today.
Launching off that, shall we go and talk about Spider-Man's new trailer 2 for Far From Home?
Let's get into something we actually supposed to be people tuning for. I am close to losing my shit. It was like I've been critical of Marvel trailers many times because I don't know that they do particularly well. Probably because they don't have to. You know, you know, people are going to turn up anyway. So you know, they could just have like a fat guy in a bunny costume and going, Shang-Chi comes out next week. Fucking see it, all right? You know, like
that would be an amazing trailer.
You know, but like people would go, "Oh, okay, new Marvel film, cool, no worries." But this one, I mean, we already had the teaser a couple of months ago, I think. where we got the reveal of Doc Ock at the end of a trailer. Hello, Peter. And you're like, oh, okay. I think we all suspected it was going to be the multiverse kind of colliding entry point for the Marvel Universe with Doctor Strange and doing his thing. And we also had the hinting at Green Goblin, but this one kind of a new trailer reveals quite a bit more. So
yes,
it sounds a lot like Willem Dafoe's back.
Yeah.
Which I'm fucking hoping that will be awesome. We have again the original Doc Ock, and I'm disappointed I can't remember the actor's name right now off the top of my head. But he was a guy who at the start of there we go, from Molina, the guy who gets killed at the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes.
And of course, we've got Sandman in there. We have Electro. I've got to be honest, I haven't jumped on the IMDb page, and I assume that's Jamie Foxx.
It sounds like his voice, so I presume so, but who knows?
It looked like Jamie kind of sounded like him.
Yeah.
And we've got a black costume Spider-Man. Is that Venom? I don't know.
That's not Venom. I think that's because he's also, there was that moment where he's doing kind of like magic shit on his arm as well. So I don't know whether that's a dark Spider-Man, a bad Spider-Man, or something like that, which I wouldn't necessarily be surprised about. But Jamie
Foxx is listed. Jamie Foxx is in the cast, as is Thomas Haden Church. So they'll be and Reese Evans. So they would all be reprising their characters from the previous films. I mean, and I guess the money shot here, which they didn't give us, is will we get Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in some sort of magical crossover event? Who knows? I mean, my vibe is that they will, just because people really think they will, and if they don't, people are going to be pretty disappointed. And I mean, obviously, that is no guarantee, but I would have thought that they might have come out and said, "Look, it's not happening. I just set expectations to low. You're not getting Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in here."
Yeah, I feel like it's from what we've seen in the two trailers, I think that there's not actually going to be too much of what is comically in the comics referred to as the Sinister Six actually all fighting Spider-Man throughout the whole thing. It kind of looks and feels like it builds up to, like, there's that shot at the end of the trailer where there's kind of Electro there with giant face of Sandman and everyone, and there's just one Spider-Man just coming in at nighttime around, I think it's around the Statue of Liberty or something like that, a big monument to Captain America or something, I can't remember. I get the feeling that is like the last third, and it might end up resulting in some kind of sacrifice to help just send them back to the universes that they're supposed to be. And that might be when there's that very obvious teaser line of, I can't do this, I can't save everyone. And you know that there's going to be some form of line coming up. You don't have to. And then just these other two Spider-Man swing in, maybe even a third Spider-Man, and they use this to introduce Miles Morales into the MCU as well. That would be
cool. Or even, they go full Spider-Verse. We know Marvel is big on building up its representation now. We have Asian superheroes. We've had the real investment into female-led superhero films, LGBT characters. This would be a wonderful opportunity to bring in a Spider-Gwen, coming like that. But you're right, if they bring out their Spider-Ham, I am going to be losing my shit. If you haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse, by the way, people, it is I think actually is the best Spider-Man film that's ever been made. Be cool.
It's hard to challenge that. The thing that I think everyone needs to remember for this as well is this movie has always been on the books to happen before Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. So the fact that this is the movie we see that depending on how you look at the events of WandaVision and Loki and how that ties in, if those three season endings all happen at the same time, which there's a lot of theory that it is, as well as this Doctor Strange fuck up, then there's not really going to be much genuine resolution of the danger. The danger is still going to persist because there's Doctor Strange movie coming afterwards. So it's going to be an interesting way. How are they going to end this?
Interestingly, saying director of this film is set to direct the Fantastic Four, so who knows what apparently that's in pre-production at the moment. I mean, everyone who's ever seen any of the Fantastic Four movies today will be a little bit skeptical, but I'm excited. It looks amazing. It's a great trailer. Should we slide sideways then and talk about something else that happens in the multiverse?
Absolutely, let's go.
And that would be the latest Disney Plus series, Marvel's What If, the animated series, which we started, I think maybe the first 2 or 3 episodes in before the wine incident where he was sent out to wine country, sent out to pasture. And we've been a little critical as parts of it. Especially, we were very critical of the first episode. I think we were very disappointed with the animation. The voice work was pretty questionable in the first episode. You were pretty hard on it in the second episode as well. How did you feel now that you've seen the whole run? How did they pull it back?
I've had time to think about this, and the biggest problem that I have with the whole thing is they messed up the delivery of this. And it's supposed to be set in different multiverses, in multiple universes, and then the finale, when you bring together this what if multiverse Avengers team, why didn't they take this opportunity to... I still think it was a missed opportunity to go the Animatrix, where they have different animation styles, to really denunciate the different universes. I think that would have worked. It worked really well in Into the Spider-Verse, which we were talking about just now. You can absolutely do it. The other thing that I felt was a major problem with the show overall was there's some episodes like the Captain Carter one, which was essentially just a gender swap. And a little bit of like, oh, there's an Iron Man suit here. That didn't really do anything. It didn't really serve anything. And then there was stuff like the Zombies, Marvel Zombies one, which actually had some really interesting stuff going on, but they rushed through it. And then they had, in the last thing, they just threw Gamora and Iron Man from a different universe into it because they wanted Gamora in there as well. It's like, wait, why are you doing this? Why are you rushing and slowing down all this stuff? This is literally your show. You could have had a 5-minute episode and then a 35-minute episode, and then instead of having 7 or 8 episodes, you could have had as many episodes as you wanted. You were entirely in control of this. People would have loved it if there was just these mini bite-sized stories that were arguably cinematic quality, even if it's just a 5, 8, 12-minute episode, and then the next one is 45 minutes long. It's like, people would love it, and it gives you time to really actually tell these, like the Captain Carter one, if they had actually kind of put more energy into it, because it felt very slow. If they had done that as a quick snap, 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 then it would have probably been more impactful. And so I feel like there was a lot of possibility that was just squandered because they played it safe on how they delivered the product. Does that make sense?
It does, and I would agree on some level. I 100% agree, and we were in lockstep on the animation style. It would have been sick if it had, or something like Love, Death and Robots. Go out to market and go, who wants what, right? Like, tell me that animation houses around the globe wouldn't have been lining up to do their own episode. You can tell them what to film. But anyway, it's the fact that they're Disney. They're initially known as an animation studio, and I don't know if they actually
template.
Did they do it in house? I don't know. But like maybe they just didn't want to be seem to be going out to market when that's what they used to be known for. But it didn't rob it too much, but it could have definitely enhanced it if you'd had, as you know, like different styles to denote different stories. And I agree also on the filler episodes, like the Captain Carter episode. I mean, the Thor episode for a lot was kind of a filler until the last scene really was kind of just filler. And I was watching it going, what is this shit? Like, I mean, this is crap. Until they just dragged it back with that scene at the end where Ultron shows up, and you're like, okay, this is interesting. When it ends, you're like, I hope you paid it off. And of course they did. So that was nice. But you're right. They did it was a very uneven series. And, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the note you about putting Gamora and co in the into the final episode is because the episode that was supposed to be in was pushed to season 2. So don't quote me on that. I'm sure I read that somewhere, that because of COVID, they didn't have time to make it. So, but they still wanted to put them in the last episode. So we just, it'll make sense next year. You're right. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe you're right. It's your show on your TV network.
Yep.
Like, say, sorry, it's coming out in the next month. We need another month to make another episode or something. I don't know. Like, I know they've got a pretty tight schedule because but like Black Widow got pushed 18 months, and all of a sudden its ending didn't make a whole lot of sense because Julia Louis-Dreyfus turned up on the Winter Soldier and a Falcon show.
Falcon, yep.
So you're right. That was a little confusing, but I'll pay this. That there were some spectacularly high points in this show. Like, I think the highest points that Marvel, maybe it's Marvel TV shows have hit. Like, I like some of the early. You and I both liked the early episodes of WandaVision, which apparently we're the only people on Earth who did. Everybody else was boring. But like, what if Doctor Strange lost his heart?
Yes.
What if Ultron won? And what if zombies to a lesser extent? And the last episode was, okay. But those 2 episodes, what if Ultron and Doctor Strange, you're like, fuck yes, that is what I wanted from this. That was awesome.
Yeah. Those are the 2 episodes that I think, there is more than enough story here to actually stretch that out beyond the, push it up to 35, 40, 45 minutes and just really go to town, especially because of how important those characters are in the finale. They are ridiculously important, and they are very popular, and I have a feeling that the what if Stephen Strange lost his heart is gonna have some kind of ramifications in Spider-Man, and it's definitely gonna have ramifications into the multiverse of madness. Sorry.
And how good was it to see them do Ultron right?
I mean, oh my god, yes.
If you think back to the Age of Ultron, I think I watched it again recently. Like, okay, it's really just I think we probably talked about it. Maybe I think the show was probably on at the time. We probably talked about it back then. It was really just setting up the next phase of the Marvel universe. It was almost like a transition Avengers film. We need to put an Avengers film out to get the story from here to there. Ultron will do, but Ultron never really felt like much of a threat in those films. Obviously, the good guys are going to win. But somehow Loki felt threatening in the first Avengers movie. That invasion felt threatening, and it felt like there was stakes involved. I mean, were there? Probably not, but it felt like it, and that was good enough. And then, of course, to Thanos films, the Infinity Gauntlet saga. With those, of course, Thanos is the creme de la creme of Marvel villains, and those films are great, obviously. But the Ultron, you're like, whatever. It's just a robot with James Spader. Wasted James Spader's voice.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, like, wow, all of a sudden, that is what they should have done with Ultron, right?
1,000%. It was threatening. It was just there was just this persistent feeling of fear that, honestly, I don't really think any cybernetic cinematic character has presented since the T-1000. it just kept going. There was like this is unstoppable. The way that he's got these safeguards and safeguards and safeguards and just everything is like, how are you going to stop this? This is brilliant. The heroes are constantly on the back foot, so you instantly invest with them.
The only question I had is I don't want to go too long on this because we got a lot to talk about. But how did he dealt with Thanos in a? Thanos has been done kind of dirty since Infinity War and Endgame. Like, I mean, they kind of blew off the Infinity Stones in Loki. It's all paperweights. And then this one, he basically goes, "Oh, hello, zoom and space," and basically slices him in half. I'm like, why didn't Vision just do that if that was an option?
I kind of wonder if they're low-key doing it on purpose, just because Thanos is arguably the best, most successful villain that the MCU has had to date. And everyone is going, well, how are they going to beat him? By kind of almost doing like the wrestler story arc of the bad guy, the all-powerful bad guy, and suddenly having him lose in these dumb scenarios just dehumanizes him so that the next big bad or the next hero can rise up and look even more impressive. I wonder if they're doing that kind of storytelling just so that it's like, okay, because everyone is now kind of going, oh, is it going to be Galactus? Is it going to be Mephisto? They're throwing out all these kind of metaphysical, cosmological entities of the Marvel universe, and it's like, who's it going to be? How are they going to make it feel genuinely threatening the way Thanos did? And every villain is being measured against Thanos. So maybe
that's it. It didn't detract from it for me. I still enjoyed that episode immensely, and it kind of saved the series for me because it did tie up a lot of those episodes earlier on, like the Thor kind of. I mean, that really saved that from complete failure. There's a season 2. We'll see what it looks like then. I read just a rumor that there could be a Marvel Zombies spin-off.
Yeah, I remember reading something about that. Yeah.
But that is obviously a series of comic books as well. I actually remember reading a couple of those because I like zombies. And so that probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world because there's some material there that they can pull from, which is, source material actually instead of just spinning something up like I think I read there's going to be an Agnes spin-off from One Division.
There's an Agatha Harkness spin-off. There's She-Hulk coming out with Tatiana Maslany. You've got obviously Hawkeye is the next TV show that's coming, which basically looks like, oh yeah, we're going to do Hawkeye in Die Hard, which I'm kind of down for.
I know a few people who won't be down for that one because they still haven't forgiven him for what he did to Black Widow in not even him really, but what the writers did to Black Widow in Endgame. But I thought there was a nice wink back at that in What If Ultron 1, where Clint sacrifices himself to against the Ultron's forces to try and get Black Widow away. But that didn't do it for some people I know who are still holding that grudge very personally. While we're talking Marvel, should we just move on to the big dog?
Let's move on to the big dog, yeah.
And I need to give an apology to our audience and say I've asked George specifically not to talk about the Eternals just yet because I haven't had a chance to see it yet, and I would like to go in. I am trying my hardest to go in with an open mind on this one, despite all the bad reviews and people shitting on it. I want to know as little about it as possible so I can give it its fair chance. Just like we went and saw Ghostbusters. We went in and gave it a fair shot.
We tried our best on that one.
And I will never forget what he said to me. He turned to me in that cinema after the credits rolled and said, well, that just happened.
The best review I've ever given.
Pretty much. But so we will get into the Eternals. But look, if you really wanted to read a review of the Eternals, there are millions of them out there. But you will get our views on the Eternals soon enough because that man over there has seen it, but I have not had the chance yet.
Yes.
But Shang-Chi I did see a couple of weeks ago. What did you make of it?
I loved it. Out and out loved it. It did everything that a blockbuster, that a Marvel movie, the superhero movie needed to do to just hit every button. It was fun. It kept a good pace going. The action sequences were really good. There was genuine heart to it and story and this personal level that you could just connect to comfortably. None of the characters were overly annoying. None of the bad guy was actually interesting and layered, and just everything was absolutely firing on all cylinders. Really loved it. One of the most enjoyable, not necessarily best, because there was nothing particularly like, oh my god, that's phenomenal cinema or anything like that. It was just, everything was just solid. It knew what it was trying to do and it did it. Absolutely. It hit its goals. Loved it. Really enjoyable.
I said at the start I've been critical of Marvel's trailers, and this was one of them.
Yes.
I didn't like the trailer. I thought it was generic and boring, and it made me giving nothing to work from. Did not make me excited for the movie. And I think regular listeners and viewers might have said something rash like this could be their first real big bomb. Don't think it was, and if it was just a pandemic, I think. And it certainly wasn't reviewed as their biggest bomb. That was left for the Eternals. So far, anyway. Not making a judgment. I just know that it is the lowest rated film so far. Shang-Chi has a 7.7 on IMDb, and Metascore is 71. So it's not this film. I'm less glowing than you, but I liked it a lot. I'm going to give a caveat here and say I saw it at Doncaster here in Melbourne, your former place of employment. And what a shithole that place is. I don't know. Did you go to the cinema very much?
Yeah.
I don't know if it does. The seats were super uncomfortable. And I don't know if they've turned the air conditioning off because of the unspecified virus, but it was super hot and stuffy in the cinema if they did turn it off. That's
just how that place is.
Okay.
It's one of those things where in summer they turn the heating on and in winter they turn the aircon on.
Of course they do. That makes sense. Cheaper that way. So I'm just giving a caveat there because no one really cares about my cinema experience, just to say that that can influence what you take away from a film. My first problem with Shang-Chi is it's too long. And I am like a fucking broken record here. I say it every time. It's too long. Much too long. It needed 20 minutes cut out of it. Whatever happened to the 90-minute popcorn film? Like this felt like a very long 2 hours, 12 minutes. So it desperately needed 15 to 20 minutes cut out of it, and it would have been really tight if they'd done that. There was all sorts of stuff they had in it. It was a bit fluffy, especially towards just the third act. Again, you're in a stuffy cinema with uncomfortable seats. You're going to feel those 2 hours, 12 minutes.
Yeah.
If you're in gold class, maybe not. So just bring it out there. But I do think it was too long, and I think that's a Marvel thing they've been doing lately. They've been going to go creeping their stories out a little bit.
Yeah, they definitely have. It kind of echoes back to what I was saying about What If, where their time management of the stories they want to tell, and this actually echoes with all of their TV shows. They've been inconsistent in their pacing and how they're measuring out the time they're using, and they're, as we said, they are in control of all of it. How many episodes they have, how long the episodes go. And yet they're still putting filler in there for what reason? It's like, okay, but why? You don't need to. You've managed to do 10 years of interweaving stories culminating in something that has basically never been seen before. Why can't you do it with a TV show where other TV shows have been able to do it and they've been able to, keep the pace going and have these kind of cool down episodes but still be worthwhile and investing, and they keep doing it.
And they've extended to their films now, so their films are longer than they need to be. And I have a controversial take on what that might be, because I don't think they're hiring the right directors in a way. So this film was directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, not a household name, which is fine in a way. He is Hawaiian. So I don't know what his heritage is, but obviously this is Marvel's first Asian superhero. So whether or not, not saying that's why he was hired, he has directed some very decent films in the past, including Short Term 12. If you haven't seen that, that is a not particularly uplifting film, but it's very good. and Just Mercy, which came out at the start of 2019. 2020, I think, actually came out just over a year and a half ago. And again, that is a decent film with Michael Jordan in it, Michael B. Jordan. But he's an art house director, is what he is. He makes art house films before this. And Chloe Zhao, who's done The Eternals. Again, I can't speak about the quality of it. Definitely from an art house background. These people come from an independent world where you go trying to tell much more expansive stories, and you have, in some ways, being an independent film, a little bit more freedom, lower budget, but more freedom to tell the story you want to tell. And you know, whereas if you think about years gone by, think about someone like John McTiernan, or dare I say it, Jan de Bont, a lot of bad films. But when or Roland Emmerich, you know, they got in, they told a story, they got the hell out. Now, someone's going to come at me and go, well, Roland Emmerich made this film, it was 4.5 hours long. You know, at their best, that's the kind of thing that they did well. So I don't know if it's the fact that they're hiring these kind of directors who are used to really long-form storytelling and really slow, you know, story where, you know, they're not trying to keep an audience's. They've got a little bit more story to work with, shall we say. And, you know, Shang-Chi, you know, it's not a lot. My other problem with Shang-Chi here, and I'm being a bit critical for a film I liked, is the ending. It was yet another CGI shitfest, which we should be used to now because every Marvel film ends in a CGI shitfest. This one was particularly unconvincing to me. It went on for too long for me. It's just all of a sudden there's, you know, the dragons fighting each other. It looked kind of cool. I've heard some people diss the CGI and say it wasn't very good. I'm like, that didn't bother me so much, other than the fact that I just didn't care. And you know, they go. What was interesting about the film, as you sort of noted, was the villain in this piece, not the Mandarin. That's the character's name. Is not the Mandarin because he's definitely not the Mandarin. Zhu Wenwu. I'm going to pronounce that poorly. As you sort of noted, really complex, layered character with really interesting and detailed and understandable motivations. And when you know it, that makes a fascinating villain, Marvel, you know. Why don't you do that a little bit more often? But he was, and then we sort of slide sideways from that to a character we just heard about 20 minutes ago, or a villain or a monster we just heard about 20 minutes ago, who's a giant, you know, Cthulhu CGI thing, and you're like, okay. I mean, yeah, whatever. I would just like to see one of his films one day that had a more personal kind of. I think it maybe was what made Endgame so good, apart from all the great things that went into that story and how interesting a villain Thanos was. But in the end, it came down to, you know, basically Iron Man going one-on-one with another character who is almost seen, you know, like an actual character as opposed to a CGI creation.
And honestly, the last moments of the fight are really fucking, like, they're drunk guys at a bar shit fight. It's not this sort of like heroic fight. It's them literally wrestling over a glove. It's not heroic and super amazing. The background is this battle of hundreds and hundreds of villains and heroes all fighting each other, but the core is just two guys fighting over jewelry, and yet it had so much emotion. I am absolutely with you for Shang-Chi. The fact that Tony Leung was his character when Wu was being manipulated. I would have loved it if they had just gone, you know what, we're going to go all in on the emotions here, and we're going to get Shang-Chi over there. He's going to get right to the point. One or two of those little creatures are going to bust through, but we're not going to reveal the big bad. We're not going to reveal the great protector. And it's literally them just essentially having a pissing contest and a father-son fight where the father finally realizes and just, he doesn't have to die. The bad guy doesn't always have to fucking die. He can actually have redemption. That would have been fucking amazing.
I'm being critical here. Like, these are the things that bother me. It was too long in the CGI at the end. Really kind of dragged it down a little bit. But up to that point, you sort of noted the film is the first act of the film is brilliant. It's one of the better first acts for any of the Marvel films. I really, really enjoyed the first act. The bus fight was the second best public transport related fight I've seen this year. Props to nobody for number one. But it is, of course, the number one public transport related fight in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, topping the pathetic effort by Captain Marvel, Stan Lee cameo aside. But I really enjoyed that fight, and that was, and I know a lot of people are critical of Marvel for all the quippy humor that they is always in their films. But I was laughing my ass off at the guy FaceTiming, yo, it's your boy, and I did a little martial arts when I was young. I'm going to try and commentate this for you now, and that was an Aquafina. Again, I've seen a lot of people criticize her as not being funny in this film or annoying, and I'm with you. I didn't find any of the characters particularly annoying in this, and I can see how, as the comedy sidekick, she might have been annoying in the hands of a less talented performer or a less well written. But I found her stuff very, very funny, and I found her amusing as well. And I got total Speed vibes from that scene. I guess I don't know if that was deliberate or not, but that was where I was feeling about it. I thought there's virtual martial arts in the film. I'm by no means a martial arts film expert. They're not really my forte.
Well, anyone who looks at us knows that we're masters.
We've studied the blade. And
I cut my finger.
So I'm not exactly an aficionado, so I can't look at this film and go, oh yes, it's the wing juice. I just don't have it, but I found it very convincing, very entertaining, and very graceful. Some of it was like the Wenwu when he meets his wife. It's almost like ballet, and I'm certain it's supposed to be like that. It was reminiscent to me of something like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Not quite to that level, but reminiscent of it. And that's a good thing. You're watching a film of martial arts, and you definitely want to be reminded of that film, and I believe it was an influence. So the martial arts fight scenes I thought were wonderfully well done. I think Simu Liu, the star who plays Sean, aka Shang-Chi, is an accomplished martial arts performer, which is probably why he was hired. And so I found those scenes wonderful. I was very pleased to see Ronnie Chang pop up, and I'm like, I know that guy. He's an Australian.
Yeah, he's always entertaining. He kind of always plays the same character, but he's just damn entertaining.
He really is. And I thought he didn't have much screen time here, but I was glad to see him pop up. He was in Godzilla as well for about 2 minutes. He got a shopkeeper. But I thought he was again, he kind of really stood out to me. Maybe it's just because I recognized his face. And I had to lean over to Michelle and go, who's that guy? I know that guy. It's Ronnie Chang. I'm like, oh, of course it's Ronnie Chang from The Daily Show. And he did a TV series here called Foreign Student or International Student, about being an international student at Melbourne Uni, which was very funny. So I enjoyed his brief role as well. Criticism again, the guy who played, I think he's Death Dealer, the guy with a funky kabuki mask.
Oh yes.
Like that was really that guy kept popping up, and he looked like a badass. And you're like, oh, he's going to do something cool. He didn't do anything cool.
It was a little bit like Captain Phasma.
Very much so. Yeah, he's got a cool look. And you're
okay, cool look. You're not doing anything.
And I must be honest, I kept thinking of all the way through. Every time he popped up, he reminded me of the Troma film, Sergeant Kabuki Man, which is probably racist. I probably shouldn't say that.
That's not what they were going for.
No, I was like, maybe it's just me, and I'm a little bit too jaded. But I just kept saying I didn't actually know his name was Death Dealer until I saw a review somebody else did, because I don't think anybody actually names him in the film.
No, I don't think so. I think,
and so I'm just like, oh, Sergeant Kabuki Man's back, and I'm like, that's not what Marvel want me to be thinking right now, unless they bought the rights to the Troma catalog and Toxic Avenger is part of the MCU. Now that would be cool.
That would be cool.
That's the crossover we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, they managed to get Howard the Duck in there. I want James Gunn, Toxic Avengers.
That would be cool. I haven't heard about them. I'm sure Troma would sell it for a price. They're not picky about these things. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a really decent film, and just talk on the political side of things for a moment. I've criticized Marvel in the past for being a little bit pandering in terms of some of the stuff they've done with female superheroes in the past. Women, we've ever seen in the Endgame where they all team up and in a completely unnatural way, or some of the pandering that's gone in and some of the other works. And I've heard some people be very cynical about this film as well, about it being pandering. But I've said before in the show that representation matters. And I had a Chinese Australian friend of mine talk to me, send me a message after seeing this film on Friday night. He was ecstatic. He sent me a message. He said, "I am Shang-Chi." So when you sort of realize that, you stop and think he's lived in Australia his entire life, but he's never seen anybody in a superhero film really that looks like him. So that was a thing for him, a big thing for him. So he was really quite pleased about that. So that's exciting that they're doing stuff like that. It matters.
Can you still hear me, Travis?
I can.
Okay, my video is just frozen then. Okay.
My video is frozen as well. We're just gonna. Can you hear me though?
Yeah, I can hear you and I can see you, so it's weird.
What did you think of Ben Kingsley's role, by the way? Sorry, go back onto it one step back from me being political.
I loved that they haven't just kind of sunsetted him to the attic of the MCU and never going to talk about him again. It was delightful to have him in there. I do kind of feel it was a little bit too much. Like they could have just left it behind after a brief period, but he wasn't too invasive in the final chapter of the movie. But yeah,
I'm just glad that they gave a shout out to a one shot. The one shot thing's kind of been forgotten for a number of years now.
Yeah.
If you don't know what the one shot is, that was a series of 5-minute short films starring various sort of side characters that Marvel did a few years ago. I think they were extras on a DVD or something, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
But you can find I think it's "Hail to the King" is the one shot with a Mandarin in jail with Sam Rockwell's Justin Hammer.
Yes.
Anyway, it's very funny, and it sets up what happens in Shang-Chi, which is interesting. It's a fairly obscure little tidbit of the Marvel universe that's caused that.
Yeah. But I really did appreciate that, and I hope that they actually do bring a little bit more of those little bits in. Oh,
I've disabled my camera and I'm turning it back on to see if that helps.
Okay, yeah.
Please ignore our technical problems. That's one thing that hasn't changed in this show. And I think it's just me.
And
we're back. Oh, you're moving again.
There we go.
How exciting.
Whew, thrilling stuff. It is Restream being shitty again. Yay.
So that's a plus. I was really excited that this film actually turned out to be something pretty decent.
Yes. It was thoroughly enjoyable. And I watched this the same night that I watched Eternals.
Wow, that was a busy night.
Yeah.
Were you at the cinema or did you watch it at home?
Cinema. Yeah. At the cinema. I thought, you know what? Knowing my luck, we're going to be put into the lockdown again. I want to get a couple of movies under my belt, damn it.
Definitely worth the definitely be my mindset as well. It's you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
We thought we were free and clear, but no.
They'd pull me back in.
Believe it or not, and I know our fan has missed this, but I have I do have a commercial break ready for us.
We have a sponsor. Wonderful.
It is of course, Channel 10 of Adelaide from 1990. Thank you to Channel 10 from 30 years ago. When we come back, did you have a chance to see Ordinary People at all?
I did, yes.
Okay, now maybe we'll come back and have a chat about our most recent Chain movie. I saw it 2 months ago, so did I. It's going to be an interesting chat. Let's see how much you remember about it. But I'm going to move him over here and get ready to put our sponsor on the air. That one.
Okay.
Let me see if we have any audio.
I'm going to bring that in. There we go. All right. Back soon, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Well, I've been doing a terrible job at Mystery Science Theater 3000ing these adverts because I have no idea what any of them are.
Well, this one I think is a MasterCard commercial.
See, you know that straight away. I
did actually preview commercials before I.
So you don't tell how the sausage is made.
Anyway, did we have no sound there? I'm sorry about that. I'm using a new browser. I'm using a new browser because apparently you're not supposed to use Chrome anymore. Oh. Massive security flaws in Chrome, I'm sorry to say. So I've been using a new browser, and it doesn't look and act the same way, unfortunately.
Oh. Well, that's a shame. But never mind.
Well, anyway, we know for next time.
Now let's go on to our chain movie.
Yes. One trick. I just have to camera off. Can you feel for me?
I can absolutely do that. All right. So for those who might be finding us for the first time ever, welcome to Armchair Producers. We are a show that started off just because we were bored of sin, but we've been going for actually more than 126 episodes. We started off as the G&T podcast, but for Armchair Producers, we've been doing chain movie. We started with one movie, and every movie has connected in some way, shape, or form to the previous. For example, the movie that got us to Ordinary People was the Netflix movie The Discovery, which had Jason Segel and Robert Redford, as well as Jesse Plemons. And we both actually rather enjoyed that one. And then Travis got to choose where we went next, which was Ordinary People, the Oscar-winning Robert Redford directed Ordinary People.
Sorry about that. The perils of live recording and leaving the fridge open so it beeps at you.
Scandalous.
I hadn't actually ever seen this film before, so this was a
no, neither had I.
I guess reputation precedes it. Has been kind of a pretty famously awarded, and my hair is doing all sorts of great things. So apologies, people. Being a very famously awarded and critically acclaimed film. And so you're gonna have to, as I said, I watched this 2 months ago because we didn't know we were going off the air at that point in time. It was just sort of it was a bit of random craziness that led to that. So you'll forgive me if I don't remember a lot, but this is actually a pretty fucking great movie. This is pretty dark stuff. So the synopsis: the accidental death of the older son of an affluent family deeply strains the relationships amongst the bitter mother, the good-natured father, and the guilt-ridden younger son. So we have Donald Sutherland starring as the father, good-natured father, as Calvin Jarrett. Mary Tyler Moore as Beth, the mother. Timothy Hutton as Conrad, the guilt-ridden son. And notably here, Judd Hirsch as Dr. Berger, who is Conrad's psychologist, I guess is the way to put it, counselor.
Yeah, therapist, I guess.
And this film feels actually really, really contemporary for a 41-year-old film in a lot of ways. Like, I think you could remake this today. I mean, it wouldn't be anywhere near as good, probably, but you could definitely transfer a lot of a story into the present day. And I don't think you'd have to change a whole lot apart from the technology and the fashion.
Yeah, it's unusually fresh.
So to give a little bit more detail about Beth, Calvin, and their son Conrad are living in the aftermath of the death of their other son. Conrad is overcome by grief and misplaced guilt to the extent of being a suicide attempt. He's in therapy. Beth had always preferred his brother, and he's having difficulty being supportive to Conrad. Calvin is trapped between the two, trying to hold the family together. Really powerful movie. Like, everybody has a family, right? And families are notoriously fucked up. I remember a book by a Canadian author I read about 20 years ago called All Families Are Psychotic. And it wasn't a great book, but it was a good title. And I think it's an apt description in this one, in the sense that, like, I think a lot of people are going to find something in this story that resonates with them. I mean, how many people do you know who aren't in one kind of therapy or another? I think I know one person, especially after what we've been through in the last couple of years. So the I guess the story of a mentally ill young man, not that we're young anymore, really, but it's one that speak for myself. You're not over 40 yet, are you?
No. Haha.
Well, you're youngish. So I think it's something everyone can kind of connect with. And
Yes.
I felt really strong echoes of well, I should have said Good Will Hunting. But I mean, I guess the echoes were of this film were in Good Will Hunting, in that relationship between Robin Williams as a psychologist and Matt Damon's Will. I felt a very similar dynamic between Judd Hirsch's Dr. Berger and Timothy Hutton's Conrad in this film, in the sense that it's a really informal style of doctor-patient relationship.
What I think is, to its credit for this one, comparing the two, because I think it's anyone who hasn't seen this and has seen Good Will Hunting will look at it and go, oh, there's a lot of similarities. I think the thing that makes it a bit more true is the very normal nature and of Conrad. He is not a genius. He is just a young person trying to make sense of, reorganize, and find himself after such tragedy and self-harm. And that resonates with me a lot. But at the same time, I feel like it is more... I think more people can actually just associate with that, rather than the scene of Will Hunting knowing that he's the smartest man in the room, and that kind of level of arrogance. There's not an arrogance to Conrad when he's in those scenarios. He is just someone who literally doesn't understand and doesn't know how to communicate what's going on in his mind.
You make a really wonderful point there. This is a desperately, painfully normal family. No one has superpowers. Yeah, no one's actually a boy wizard.
Nope.
No one
is ludicrously well off.
Nobody's secretly trained as an assassin. It's just a normal family going through a period of extraordinary crisis, and that's not something you see very often anymore. Anyway, I mean, this film would not get made today, basically, because what studio would fund it? Maybe.
Well, I was thinking the same thing, and I think if there was going to be this movie today making of it, it would end up falling into probably like an art house melodrama. And despite the genuine weight of what this family is dealing with and how it is presented to us, it skirts away from melodrama just enough every time that it's just emotionally raw and investing, without it being sort of like a Lars von Trier movie or something like that.
Yeah, where it would probably end up would be something like Netflix, something like Marriage Story. That landed. I haven't seen it, but like I just haven't been that depressed that I felt like I needed to end my life by watching Marriage Story. It doesn't seem like an uplifting kind of film. You know what I mean? It's a kind of prestige product that would probably end up on one of the streaming services and get nominated for Oscars. So that said, there are so few films that are just about grief and grieving. And while there are a number of films that deal with sort of mental health problems and that sort of thing, but the pain of grief and grieving is not an easy story to tell. And as you sort of know, to do it in a way that doesn't come across as manipulative or, sappy or melodramatic is quite a skillful achievement on the behalf of Robert Redford. I think people forget. It was probably could say is, but he doesn't know if he actually directs anymore, but he was a very fine director at one point in time in his career. The real question is, do you think they did Mary Tyler more dirty in this film? Because she's not she doesn't come out of this looking good, her character of Beth.
That is very true. She is, for all intents and purposes, the villain of the piece. But at the same time, I don't necessarily know if they it's an out and out destruction of character kind of scenario. I think that she does a very good job of coming across as someone who is even further in the quagmire of not knowing how to deal with things and how to communicate than Conrad or Calvin were in those movies. This is, interestingly, kind of the way that cinema, particularly through the 80s and 90s into the early 2000s, especially before the Me Too movement and things like that, those kind of roles would have been reversed. The denial would have categorically been the father, whereas it's the two males in this movie that actually do make those moves and are more in touch with. And
they're a bit more sensitive, aren't they? They're a bit more of a nurturing type, as opposed to it is against type to have a female character cast as of a mother character cast as the unfeeling, cold one. Though I found myself wondering when I was watching it, if again, to transport this film to contemporary time, would this film be accused of something like misogyny today if we cast and shot a role like Mary Tyler Moore's Beth in this film? And maybe it would.
I think that it would take a very deft actress to be able to pull it off. And the name that instantly just jumped to mind was Jackie Weaver. I could imagine.
She might be a little old for that now, but yeah, she certainly would be capable of pulling it off.
Yeah, but I do wonder whether there would be criticism about it, or maybe even kind of reverse criticism. We're kind of going, oh, was she done dirty? But at the same time, it's like, okay, if they did that, would that be considered pandering? Because it is that stereotypical motherly figure being turned on its head.
You should note that Mary Tyler Moore herself called the film her Holy Grail. I think, well, it was probably this is probably actually a fairly inspired piece of casting here, in the sense that they've cast someone who is best known for TV comedies, being a likable, funny actress in a cold-hearted, villainous almost role. I don't believe that was by accident by any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely agree. This is casting in the same way Robin Williams in 1 Hour Photo. It's the Spanish Prisoner with Steve Martin. And she has really proven in this that she was able to fucking bring it, because I hated her for 95% of the movie, but the way that she left and just the silence of her leaving, I couldn't help but feel sorry for her as well.
It's a different kind of feeling sorry for her, though, in a way. It's kind of pity.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed, you do honestly have empathy for Conrad and to a lesser extent Calvin. But I kind of felt pity. She's a pitiful, pathetic character at the end of the film when she's, when they basically tell her the Emperor has no clothes, and she walks out, and they've basically robbed her of their power over them to a degree. She's a pitiful character walking out. And I think I really dug that, because, to rub it of any politics here, just how often do you see an abusive mother character? Women are, mothers are usually portrayed as, a stereotype of a nurturing, loving, caring, character, or even a Sigourney Weaver type mother character of, the mother bear, defending her cubs kind of thing. You very rarely, I think, see, the mother who isn't those things, and they exist. You and I probably know people out there who had some pretty fucked up parents. Who for better for worse, have probably lived this in real life. So, again, not something you see Hollywood tackle very often. And you sort of hinted at it. You've got a suite of outstanding performances. I want to give a quick shout out to Donald Sutherland, because I know he listens to the show every week.
Yep. Hi,
Don, as we call him. He was amazing in this. Like, I don't want to over. Like I think you've got two spectacular performances there by Timothy Hutton and Mary Tyler Moore, and probably a bit more flashy, a little bit more to see. Where Calvin kind of playing that quieter, good-natured, conflict avoidant character.
Yeah,
he's not something you see very often, and he really pulls it off in a really understated way. Like the scene where he's talking about his son's death and he just stutters while he's talking about it, and you're like, oh, right in the feels, man, right in the feels.
It is so deliciously underplayed, and it just works in every single scene, whether it's just how he's talking to his friends at the party right near the beginning of the movie, and how he just has those little glances over at Mary Tyler Moore as if they're just loaded with potential and thought and consideration. And the very end where he's kind of just the layers just kind of shed off of him as she finally drives away. You can kind of see the weight coming off of his shoulders. He plays it so well. My God, he's a good actor.
And he's no, I mean, Donald Sutherland, I think, is an underrated actor in many ways. I mean, I think his most memorable role for me has always been Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978, which is a different kind of role for him again. If you look him up on IMDb, he's best known for two of the Hunger Games films. You're like, ew, really? No, thank you. But I thought he was a really wonderful performance, and and a bold choice as well for Redford. Like, he was a big star at the time to direct the film, but not star in it, and there had to be pressure on him at the time. To pop his name in amongst it. But yeah, I'm very glad. You don't actually genuinely people often ask me when they find out I do a show. How can I get on, and can I pay you to do my show? And of course, my answer is usually, how dare you speak to me? But other than that,
I've got an exclusivity deal on this man, ladies and gentlemen.
Got a no compete contract. But the other thing they asked me is what kind of films do you enjoy the most, especially when I was dating, which is like a lame question. It's like when someone goes, "What's your favorite movie?" and you're like, "One, I can give you 10." But the answer inevitably for me is the films that I like most are the ones that make me feel something. As much as we talked about all the Marvel shit earlier, and I enjoy Marvel, obviously, as much as the next man. I enjoy a good popcorn film, a bit of escapism. Good for me. But if a film can make me feel something, that's a special, special story. If it's fear, sorrow, joy, I may be lame, but I just remember the scene, you and I, because we saw it together, Endgame, the scene where, on your left, all the characters come back. I have never heard an expression of joy like that in a cinema. I swear to God, never before have I heard people whooping and cheering and crying that moment, because we all knew they were coming back, but it was just in the way they executed it and the timing, and it was chilled. And that's what I mean. A film that makes me feel something. I mean, it was, Marvel did it briefly, but this film made me feel something. This film really hit me right in the feels. Like, I felt every one of those hits. I think, you and I are advocate. If there's such a thing, we are advocates for men's health and for getting therapy and talking about things, and
things and stuff.
We're talking about, mental health issues, and suicidal ideation and suicide is a major problem for men of my age and up. Like, we're, especially in the last year and a half or so, I don't know if they've gone up, but it probably hasn't got a whole lot better. To see a story, I mean, it's a different life stage that Conrad's dealing with here, but with somebody who's going through that situation, which I can definitely say I can appreciate the kind of feelings that Conrad is feeling in a different way. No one in my family's died, but you know what I mean. And I definitely don't have an evil villainous mother like Mary Tyler Moore, but I guess it being a story about a family going through a tragedy, and find me a family that hasn't gone through a tragedy of some kind. And
absolutely.
Anyway, so it's such a long time ago. It's foggy in my mind, but I definitely know I watched it on a Monday morning. I was deeply disappointed that I watched it alone because I definitely felt like I needed a debrief session with someone pretty much straight away.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. But we also haven't talked about Judd Hirsch. Now, this must have been a source of inspiration for Robin Williams for the way that he played. I can't remember his character's name in Good Will Hunting, but it was wonderful. Judd Hirsch again playing things underplaying a lot of things. He wasn't for the time. I mean, this is a movie that came out in 1980, and I still remember, even in the early 90s, there was the stigma of going to a therapist, and it was a dirty secret. You didn't talk about going to a therapist.
Certainly men didn't talk about it.
Yeah. And so to have a character like this, where he kind of comes off a little bit like, I don't really care. Unless you are here to actually make moves and improve, I don't have time for you. And we see that attitude stoically kind of working against Conrad, who, when he first goes, he's stubborn. When we first meet him, he's stubborn. And it's slowly being chipped away to these breakdown moments and these real crux, genuine just interactions between two people. It just sold the scenes for me so well. Really, really wonderful.
And the fact is, he was not their first choice.
Oh, really?
Gene Hackman had been cast in that role. But he had to drop out because they went back to reshoot scenes from Superman 2. Which is an aside, Joe Blow did an episode recently about what the fuck happened to his film Superman 2. Well worth a watch, because if you haven't heard that story, it's a hell of a story. But they went back for reshoots, and he had to drop out. So Judd Hirsch was cast as a replacement, and on condition he could complete the filming of his scenes in 9 days, so as not to interfere with his schedule on the TV show Taxi. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this. And it was a bit of an eye-opener for me. And, well, for starters, I mean, what a great role to land as a replacement for someone. Gene Hackman would have been good too, though. What a wonderful actor. For a lot of people, I reckon they know Judd Hirsch for one reason. It's Independence Day. And I reckon that's maybe the only thing I've ever seen him in before this, really, that I can remember. Apart from Sharknado 2, which of course, is certainly the Citizen Kane of flying shark movies. But it was interesting to see him pop up and play. I didn't realize what a fucking good actor he was. I'm like, well, you're really freaking good in this.
Yeah.
What happened to you?
I guess he was just one of those guys that just did what he wanted to do, and that was his thing. Like, he enjoyed doing Taxi. He turned up in a short-lived series called Forever with Lowen Griffiths. That stopped. He turned up in Independence Day and things like that.
Because he was in Numbers. Numbers was good.
Yeah.
He didn't do very much. If you look at his filmography here, between 1980 and 1996, when Independence Day came out, there's not a lot of action in there, right? Like, he didn't make another film after Ordinary People for 3 years. It's probably due to the fact that he was on a TV show, a fairly successful telly show. But it's just interesting. The guy, obviously that much ability, who been nominated for Academy Award, didn't get a whole lot done after that. But you're right to call him out, and I got that vibe all the way through of like that strong Good Will Hunting, and I said it to start with. It was I didn't realize how derivative that film was of this film.
Yeah.
Not to say Good Will Hunting is a bad film. I still like it, but like, okay, you can see once you see how, as you said earlier, once you see how the sausage is made, it's a little bit less exciting.
Yeah.
That's all I got, I reckon, for the film I saw 2.5 months ago. And if you've got nothing else to say, you have the keys.
Yeah. And you already said the name of the movie we're going to go to next. Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Wow. What a treat. You're being generous. There's so many. Could have gone with Sharknado too.
I
could have gone for Great Escape too. That would have been a nice companion piece, considering we did watch The Great Escape a while ago. But
I could have, but you will not sway me, sir.
Oh well, yeah, this opens up all sorts of possibilities. Leonard Nimoy's in this film.
I haven't seen this movie in probably 20 years, so I'm looking forward to revisiting it.
This is a film that's been remade a lot of times. So this is not the original. This is the remake of the original. It came out in the 50s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And it's been remade at least once, if not twice, since then. Most recently, I can think of was that Nicole Kidman version from about 10 years ago, which was pretty bad. But this is, I think, interestingly, it's a little bit like The Thing. The Thing was a remake. But I think the 1981 version remake is the definitive version of a film. Thank you for being generous and picking something fucking good. I love this movie.
You're welcome.
And
not to lead you on or anything like that, but Philip Kaufman, the director of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, he did do the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Suggestion there.
Well, we've got Jeff Goldblum in here as well, so we could do The Big Chill.
We could do The Fly.
The Fly.
Well, girls are easy.
Oh god. Oh no! I know exactly where we're going next.
All right, there we go. All right, exciting stuff, ladies and gentlemen.
Anyway, so moving on. I think you've seen the new James Bond film.
I have, yes.
Now I'm seeing that very soon. So can you give us your spoiler-free thoughts on what you think of No Time to Die?
This is a movie that has been waiting in the wings for a long time to come out. It's been
sitting around for over a year.
Yeah, and there are movies like we mentioned it previously, Black Widow, which got bumped and then put out. And I think it's fair to say that we both ended up watching it and it felt somewhat stale. This movie, however, no, it does not. It is a bit of a long one, but overall it uses its time well. And there's no secret to this being Daniel Craig's final outing as James Bond, and the whole thing really kind of hangs its hat on the audience knowing that, so it cranks everything up, and there's a lot of poignant deaths throughout the whole movie. There's a lot of callbacks. There is a fairly persistent callback to the George Lazenby James Bond with the use of "We Have All the Time in the World." And it isn't used cheesily or anything like that. It is actually used as a kind of just a little final nail in that emotional bit that it is trying to be. There is a story element to it that is rather cliched, but they still manage it well, and I think overall it is a success. I've
heard some violently varying opinions on this. I've heard people say this is one of the best Bond films ever, right through to the other end of the spectrum going, it's one of the worst.
I can see why a lot of people would say both, honestly, because the action is largely very good. The actual story of it is interesting, but I don't think it quite goes far enough. And I think part of that is because there's a lot of unanswered questions about Rami Malek's Lucifer Safin. He doesn't get much screen time, honestly, and there's James Bond, his ultimate foil is Ernst Blofeld, and in every incarnation of that pair, it's always chalk and cheese. Bond is always this action guy, whereas Blofeld is the man who has the infinite amount of henchmen to go around. And to a degree, they try and pull that off with this. But there's just lots of unanswered questions about Safin. And, well, that happened just because it needed to. It doesn't go too far over the line with any of that stuff, but it's a missed opportunity for an actor who is much, much better than this role is written. I will freely admit I loved the fact that I got to see Daniel Craig and Ana de Armas in the scene together, because they were delightful in Knives Out, and it was enjoyable watching them on screen again. And that night, after watching No Time to Die, I went home and I watched Knives Out again, because that's just an absolutely delightful movie. Kari Fukunaga, the director, he actually does a very good job overall. It's a bit of a long one, but
almost a 3-hour Bond film. Who was asking for that?
Yeah, no one, but I think Daniel Craig was, because he is listed as one of the co-producers on this, and I think that he wanted to make sure that he got the send-off that he wanted. It definitely kind of feels that way.
What do you make of... well, first question. I had someone actually ask me this before we came on the show tonight. I actually had someone say to me, about thinking of seeing the film. If I was somebody who hadn't seen any of the Daniel Craig films, can I just jump in and enjoy this? Or should I see some of the previous work?
You need to see previous movies.
I know in the trailers we see, well, like I know no spoilers here. So you can see Christopher Blofeld in the trailers.
Yep.
We see Léa Seydoux' Madeline in the trailers. They are both characters from Spectre. So could I get away with Spectre alone, or should I go back to Casino Royale?
Honestly, with the Daniel Craig Bonds, they tied the stories together so much that you can muddle your way through, but realistically, like, there are references to Eva Green's character
from Casino Royale.
Yes, and there's just persistent little nods throughout it, like the backstory for Madeline and her character, that hinges so much on one of the main characters from Quantum of Solace, and it's like, no one really wants to go back and watch that movie. So it's like, okay, yeah, but no, but
and it's interesting. It is a callback to Her Majesty's Secret Service, because that's one of the... I mean, Lazenby is generally regarded as the worst Bond of all time, I think.
But
I've never seen that one. So I don't want to have to go back and watch that, but that's an interesting
I think
callback.
A lot of the problems with people thinking about On Her Majesty's Secret Service was because it did the cardinal sin. James Bond was happy and married someone. Action men should be single so they can sleep around with as many women as they like.
Well, that raises the question, is there a place for Bond in the world today, considering the nature of his character? And there's been some controversy in the lead up to this that, we had Phoebe Waller-Bridge do a rewrite or spice the script up a little bit, and that's been interpreted as being, taking the edge off James Bond and that kind of thing. And we have Lashana Lynch playing 007. Does that mean, they're going to have a female James Bond? What do you think?
I think that the character of James Bond is a fictitious entity and therefore can be turned and converted to any bloody person in the world. You just have to make it an interesting story. Use it. If you gender bend James Bond and make them female, make that part of the story. Don't just do it and not mention it. Don't just do it and still tell a fucking Bond movie. Actually make it part of the story and make it something that we want to invest in. If you want to have a gay Asian James Bond, then cool. but make it worthwhile in the story.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Rumor confirmed by George RuPaul to be the next James Bond. Called it first. I would watch the shit out of that.
Moneypenny in this movie, by the way, is going to be played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
I would watch for maybe you could get Chris Hemsworth back for that. He played a receptionist so very well in Ghostbusters 2016. He could recover. He could get Kevin again. Was it Kevin? I don't know.
Yes.
So, I'm of the same opinion, but it will be interesting to see who they cast next. People talk about Tom Hardy, Idris Elba. I think there's a story kicking around that The Rock wanted to do it.
Yeah, he's come forward and said that he wants to do it, and I have words about The Rock.
American James Bond would be very controversial.
But I'm not going to say much more on No Time to Die because I don't want to spoil it for you.
But you say this is a thumbs up from you, though. This is a decent James Bond film.
This is overall a thumbs up. Yeah, it's an enjoyable movie, and it's one of the few James Bond, and I'm using that for all James Bond, where he actually gets to act rather than just react to action and just be this suave ladies' man. He actually does get a chance to actually show that Daniel Craig can act. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot he can actually do that. That's cool.
Most of the Bonds are still alive. We could have a Bond multiverse. It'd be hilarious. It'd be like Spider-Man. Unfortunately, we've got no Connery or more, but I'm sure we could CGI him in.
The name is Bond. Bond.
It'd be like those episodes we have all the Doctor Who's in the one episode. I wanted to cover one more film that I'm pretty sure you and I have both seen because I think there was a more fun rather than just listen to one of us talk. I'm pretty sure you saw Free Guy.
Yes, I did.
So this is one that you and I have both seen, as I just noted, and so you can actually get some input from two people rather than just one. So this one again sat on the shelf for a little while. I think it's been shot last year. I don't know when it's exactly supposed to come out, but it went straight to HBO Max, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But
and then went on to Disney Plus, I think it was.
Disney Plus, so my bad, sorry. Anyway, it went straight to a streaming service first. So this is the Ryan Reynolds Grand Theft Auto
It's Grand Theft Auto meets Ready Player One.
A bank teller discovers he's really an NPC inside a brutal open-world video game. This film is directed by Sean Levy, written by Matt Lieberman and Zach Penn. Sean Levy, probably best known for his work on the Night at the Museum films, Pink Panther movie. Pink Panther movie, Stranger Things. So season 1 of that was good. The rest of it, not so much. But anyway, I guess Stranger Things is what got him this gig. And it might be the best video game adaptation yet, even though it's not really based on a video game.
It is. I now feel like after watching this movie, I enjoyed it as well, but I am now glad that Ryan Reynolds is taking a sabbatical from acting, because this is just, again, Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds / a little bit of Deadpool. And he's very good at doing all of that stuff, and he's very charming and charismatic, and he can do action sequences, and he generally kind of brings the level of any project he's in up a couple of notches. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I need to not see you for a little while. I've got schoolyard syndrome with him, and it's like, I've seen him. He's now kind of falling into a little bit of that Johnny Depp phase of, okay, he's got a certain amount of characters. But that being said, yes, this movie is very entertaining.
You are right. We've seen Ryan Reynolds do this before. I mean, in a way, it's very similar to his Deadpool role. Obviously, not a superhero film per se, and it's not R-rated. But the whole thing's kind of a wink at the audience.
Yeah.
So we have Ryan Reynolds playing the role of Guy, and he is an NPC inside a video game. who works at the bank. Is it Free World? Free World, the game's called?
Yes, I think so.
Something like that. Free City, my bad.
Free City, yes.
And he works at the bank, and he goes through the same routines every day until he notices a character, an in-game character. Is it Jodie Comer who plays her?
Yes.
Plays the character of Millie, and she is his dream girl. And he follows her one day, and in doing so, manages to sort of break free of his programming in a sense, and become a sort of a hero inside the world. And the human players in the game stand apart from the NPCs by wearing sunglasses. So sunglasses people, and sunglasses people don't talk to us, which is actually not true, because like you do talk to a lot of NPCs in video games. But he manages to pick up these glasses and realize that there's quite a bit more going on in his world than he had previously expected. There's a side plot between it includes Jodie Comer, who is trying to, and her partner, who are trying to just feel like what's his character's Joe Keery plays his character Keys. He works at a company who owns Free City. She's a player. They're trying to infiltrate the game as they fear that their code is being used to create this. They sold, I think, to the company who owns it. It's been used to create Free World, and they're sort of in a secret mission to try and uncover their code hidden in their game. The villain of the piece is played brilliantly by Taika Waititi as Antoine, who is the CEO of the evil video game company who is, trying to steal Millie and Keys' work and kill Guy, who becomes a global phenomenon from all the shit that he gets up to inside the game itself.
Because he basically does nice things.
Yes, he doesn't kill people, or it's. If I have a criticism of this film, it's that the people who wrote it, or people who decided to spice it up. I think the original script was touched up by a few people. Probably Zach Penn. That's the kind of thing he does. Haven't actually played video games recently, or ever. So the idea that one dude doing some interesting things or slightly different things inside a video game would somehow make global news. I mean, I don't know if that's supposed to be a joke, but it didn't feel like a joke to me. And so I'm kind of going, no. And the idea of gamers being kind of, basement dwelling incel slobs is kind of a played out joke. I think South Park did that 10 years ago. Not really. Everyone seems to play games these days.
Yeah, especially after lockdown.
The inclusion of Twitch streamers was kind of nice. Though, in fairness, I only recognized one of them, and that was Ninja. The others, I'm like, oh, I guess they're famous streamers. I really don't know who they are. So, but just by being in the presence of someone like Ninja, I can only assume. Have we got our co-host joining us by the looks of things?
This is just little Charles.
Our secret co-host.
Yeah. Archimedes is now scared of going downstairs, so he stays downstairs.
He's scared of going downstairs. He's a giant dog who is scared of stairs, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
So
Proceed
that kind
to
of
laugh, everyone.
The stuff that goes on in game doesn't really feel terribly authentic. It feels like the idea of video games written by someone who doesn't actually play video games.
Yeah.
That's a minor quibble, really.
I will say there is one thing that I would have, or two game bits that I really wish that they had somehow managed to put in there. And one of them is just someone saying, "Hello there, weary traveler." And someone, it's just always stuck with me. Did you ever play the original Tomb Raider 2?
No.
Okay, so there was the training level on that. You could go to Croft Manor and you could go around, and there was just this really ancient old butler that was just bumbling around slowly, and you could lock him in the fridge and things like that. I kind of wanted to see something like that. That bumbling kind of co-assistant that just doesn't do anything and is just annoying. I feel like they possibly could have done that with Little Rail Howery, who played Buddy, who is Guy's buddy.
I think that could have. I mean, I was thinking you would go with like an arrow to the knee somewhere in there.
That's true.
That would have made sense to everybody. But video game, references. This is not a particularly original film. No. In fact, I've seen a number of people say, "Hey, this is the Lego Movie," and it basically is a very similar story to the Lego Movie. But I think it sets itself apart from the Lego Movie in enough ways that it still feels fresh enough. And not derivative enough of the Lego Movie that really slows it down. But you think about when you saw Avatar, and you're like, okay, that's just Pocahontas in space. It's a very similar story to that. Disney have done. So you're right, it was Disney Plus, because I'm thinking now Disney did some nice little bits once they got their hand on the property. The fight scene at the end, including the cameo by Chris Evans, which I think he was on set for 40 minutes or something because he had no time to shot the scene and left. That was very, very nice. That whole sequence, the fight scene at the end. I really enjoyed the character of Dude. Catchphrase. It was very funny. I enjoyed the film. This is what a popcorn film for me absolutely should be. It's a little long, and again, we're going pushing 2 hours here, but this is 155 minutes. This is about where it needed to be. So again, to go back to Shang-Chi from earlier, if it cut 15 minutes out, 20 minutes, it would have been just about this long. It would have been just on point. So this is about how long I want to spend in a stupid, dumb movie like this and just have a good time. Leave your brain on neutral. I think you'll enjoy it.
100% agree. Absolutely. This is kind of this is just a snack movie. It does nothing especially good, but it does everything that it sets out to do. Charles, what are you doing?
The perils of recording with children and animals, they never end. We have a dog that's scared of stairs, a cat that doesn't want to stay in the room. Who would have thought of that?
You'll want to come again in a minute.
So I think I think you're right to go back to your point on Ryan Reynolds. I think it's a good time. We're a little overexposed. We've got Red Notice now on Netflix. It looks like he's doing the same thing again. Yeah. Good time to take a break if you're not prepared to actually extend yourself as an actor and do something interesting.
Yeah. If you want to keep doing the same thing, spread yourself out so people don't get bored of it.
I think there's a definite chance of that right now. And I'm not opposed to someone just doing what they're good at. I just think there's a fairly limited appetite for that sort of thing. Kick back, enjoy your millions of dollars, go buy an island somewhere. You're married to Blake Lively. How bad can life be?
Yeah. Oh, you make aviation gin. Okay, cool.
I think he got out of that, but yeah, he did.
He's still the spokesperson for it, and I think he's still one of the CEOs for Mint Mobile or something like that.
Maybe he's going to go like Ashton Kutcher and go full entrepreneur. Maybe he'll start a podcast. He can come on our podcast if he'd like. We'll give him some tips.
Come on,
I wanted to quickly touch on a little art house film I saw recently. But yeah, I don't think you had a chance to see. Well, I don't think you have. It's called Nitram.
No, I have not. Not yet.
So this is an Australian film. Nitram is Martin backwards, by the way. Or Nitram. I don't know exactly how you're supposed to pronounce it. This film chronicles the events leading up to the 1996 Port Arthur Massacre in Tasmania in an attempt to understand why and how the atrocity occurred.
Now, this was up until, a couple of years ago when there was the shooting down in Melbourne. Was this the one that was like the biggest gun death in Australia or something?
Oh, it most certainly still is. There hasn't been a shooting in Melbourne. What are you talking about?
There was a car that went.
Oh, yeah, but that was he used a car, not a gun, and he didn't kill anywhere near as many people.
Okay.
Get your tragedy straight.
Sorry.
Just get your massacres in order, my friend. It's a completely different massacre. Oh god, I am going straight to hell for that one. I am never getting back into the state of Tasmania. Just not happening. So speaking of which, this film was shot in Geelong. Because they couldn't shoot it in Tassie. I mean, I guess they could have, but I think the people in Tassie are just a bit like, yeah, too soon, and it was 25 years ago. So you are correct. The Port Arthur massacre happened in April 1996, and around 35 people were killed, I think, from memory. 35, 36. It was arguably one of the biggest massacres, 35 in the world at that point in time. This film chronicles the story leading up to that. We have the character of Nitram, Martin spelled backwards. It is Martin Bryant. So nobody refers to him as Martin in the film. It's one time he's called by name. I think someone calls him Nitram, which was actually Martin Bryant's a nickname that Martin Bryant had when he was younger in school. Okay. The role of Nitram or Martin is played by Caleb Landry Jones, who is a name that didn't instantly ring a bell to me, but you might know him from X-Men First Class.
Yeah,
he played Banshee. He was in Get Out. He played the brother, I think, Jeremy. He was also in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So he is a Texan, and I think he is someone to keep your eye on because he was fucking extraordinary in this film. Extraordinary. If for no other reason than until I got out of the cinema and I looked him up, not for 1 second did I doubt he was Australian. He had the accent on point. Meryl Streep, have a good look at yourself. Like you got the Dungo took my Barbie. Caleb Landry Jones. Enough,
your insult of Meryl Streep is the thing that will keep you out of heaven.
Yes, I'm sorry. You did make a joke about a massacre. That was okay, but then you went on and insulted Meryl Streep, and that was just a step too far, my friend. Get the fuck out. So look, I think keep an eye out for him. I think he's got some other stuff coming up that's quite interesting. He was in Finch, the Tom Hanks film that came out recently on Apple. He is extraordinary in this film. He has a fantastic supporting cast. His mother, played by the great Judy Davis, the legendary Australian actress. You might know her from films like Naked Lunch, Barton Fink. More recently, The Dressmaker. I think she did a Woody Allen film back in the 90s, Don't Mention the War.
She was in Ratched. Yeah, that's right.
Anthony Lapaglia plays his dad, again, an Australian acting legend. International audiences might know his face. He was in Empire Records. He was in So I Married an Axe Murderer. I think he played a gangster in a movie in the 90s in one of those John Grisham movies. Don't quote me on that. But he did do the Hollywood thing back in the 80s and 90s for a little while. He did more recent films, Australian films like Lantana, back around the turn of the century. And he's exquisite in this film as his dad. The other standout role in this is Essie Davis, who as Helen, who is Martin's benefactor / friend. Essie Davis, you might best know from The Babadook from 7 years ago, one of the scariest films you will ever see.
Fantastic movie.
Was also in Assassin's Creed. Sorry about that one.
She plays Franny Fisher in the Miss Fisher Murder Mysteries as well, which is great.
So she's an extraordinary Australian actress. So what's wonderful about this film is we should know straight up, we never see the massacre itself. What we see is a film about people abdicating responsibility for dealing with a rather difficult person and where that can lead to.
Okay.
So we have the parents who just refuse to take responsibility and deal with Martin in a way that needs to be. They're sort of kicking the can down the road, so to speak, kicking the problem onto somebody else, just not taking ownership or responsibility for the human being that they've produced and his behavior. I mean, there are token efforts for the film. This is my interpretation anyway. There are token efforts for the film to deal with him, but I don't think they ever really take their responsibility seriously in the sense of at one point, there's a particular scene between Martin and his father, which I will try to keep loose and give away too many spoilers in case people want to see it, because I would recommend seeing it, where the mother just sort of stands back and lets it all happen. And you're like, what's up with that? That is not something, not a series of events a mother would normally be standing back and letting happen. She should be inserting herself in. I'm being cryptic, I'm sorry. And Essie Davis's character, Essie Davis, he's based on, this is all real people, by the way. Essie Davis was based on a real person named Helen, who was an heir to the Tattersall's family fortune. You'd be familiar with Tattersalls. Our Australian listeners would probably be familiar with Tattersall's. They
Tats Lotto?
They own Tats Lotto.
Okay.
So they are, I guess, a gambling enterprise. Tats, I think they own betting. I don't know. But I don't know. I didn't even know that somebody owned Tats Lotto. How does someone own a lottery? It seems weird. But that's where she got her money from. But so she lived in this rundown mansion. Martin turns up and offers to mow her lawns, and a friendship develops. Okay. The film doesn't really go down the rabbit hole of exploring whether or not it's anything more than a friendship, which is fine. But she passes away. And again, in real life, was he involved? Who knows? A film certainly has an opinion on that. She leaves all her worldly possessions to him. He is her heir. And so he is a deeply damaged, and I guess one would say, what's the polite term? Developmentally challenged young man who has now access to something like $500,000 in inheritance. In 1990, imagine how far that would have got you in 1996. Like today, you'd be like, that gets you a shitty house in a shitty suburb of a shitty city. 1996 gets a little bit further. And right through to him purchasing the guns, which he uses later in an utterly chilling scene where this gun store owner matter-of-factly sells him, an AR-15 and a shotgun, and, talks him through how firing it works and, how easy it is to use and stuff like that. You're like, knowing what we know as an audience, that's a spine-tinglingly awful scene. Even if you don't see him use them in anger, you know what they're going to be used for. So this is some people might find this film slow or boring. And if you're the kind of person who needs an explosion every 20 minutes or an action beat, every 15, 20 minutes, and this is probably not the film for you. If you're the kind of person who enjoys this is the wrong word, maybe, who is interested in getting inside the mind of some pretty damaged people and trying to understand some things that are virtually impossible to understand, then maybe this is the film for you. If you like thoughtful film, if you like actually exploring topics that are uncomfortable, if you like feeling uncomfortable at the movies, then this is. I know it sounds a strange thing to talk about, but I don't think cinema should always be about making us feel uplifted and excited. You should get the gamut of emotions. The director of his, sorry,
I was just going to say, the way you're describing it, kind of. Does it have anything stylistically similar to Gus Van Sant's Elephant?
I can see the connection in the sense that was, of course, the fictionalized version of the Columbine Massacres. I think it's a better film than I enjoyed Elephant, but I think this is a better film. I think Elephant's weak spot is it did show the massacre. And I think we don't need to see that. I think that was maybe pushing the envelope of being a little bit excessive or exploitative or gratuitous. This film, this is not about the massacre. This is the story about what caused the massacre. We all know what happened at the after the final shot of his film. It's not as fly on the wall. Van Zandt has a particular style, but I mean, it's probably not a world away from that, but I think this is a better film. Probably a better film to compare it to, if people have seen it, would be the Snowtown Murders, or just Snowtown, which was released in 2011. It is directed by Justin Kurzel, who directed this film as well. And maybe a lot of people haven't seen Snowtown. It was a reasonably high-profile-ish Australian film. Have you heard of the Snowtown Murders, the Bodies in the Barrel Murders?
No.
Well, if you want to ruin your evening, there's a rabbit hole to go down. I remember watching Snowtown. The thing about Snowtown that's interesting is that nobody is likable. Like, I mean, it's like everybody is horrible, truly horrible, and they're all real people. They were all real people. Like, the killers are obviously horrible. The people they murder are equally horrible. But Snowtown is a very uncomfortable viewing experience, and that's kind of what I felt with this one. Justin Kurzel also directed the Assassin's Creed film. So that's unfortunate. So this has been controversial. A lot of people have said we don't need to have this film made about this event. This is why it couldn't shoot in Tasmania. That's why it shot in Geelong. That was a little distracting for me. I know we've talked about this before because it used to happen to you all the time in London. You just bump into people. You just walk onto sets like you owned it. Hi, Johnny Depp and Leo DiCaprio. I'm just going to ride my bike through your set.
It was Robert De Niro.
And I always say it's rare to see places I know on the screen. And it's a shot in Geelong, and I grew up in Geelong. There's a couple of spots you're like, oh, that's North Geelong train station. They're right over the road there. That's the arena. And, it's a couple of those moments you go, that's not Tassie. But this, Geelong really well, that won't affect you. It's showing at Art House Cinemas. I saw it at the Nova. I would say worth a look if you're interested in something. The anti-Marvel film, like it's just you're not going to feel good walking out of this film, but it's worth seeing.
So, does it? You said before that it had its opinion about whether Martin had anything to do with Essie Davis' character's death. Does it have an opinion on the rest of everything that happened? Or is it trying to be more kind of somewhat sterile to the situation and just cold hard facts almost?
It's not short document. I wouldn't say this is a documentary style film. So this is not like Werner Herzog or something like that. So Werner Herzog, if I could pick one person to narrate my life, it would be Werner Herzog.
That would be kind of cool.
He is now buying his third coffee of the morning. What's not to love about that? It would be great. Sorry, it's inappropriate time to make a joke. But if the film definitely does have a kind of opinion on, I was sort of trying to say that, like, I think the film's saying that there were opportunities to stop this all the way up to it happening. It was his parents. It was Helen. It was the gun store owners. And more of these people just sort of threw their hands up and said, I'm just doing my job, kind of thing. Like, the gun store owner would say, well, I'm not here to police who buys guns. I just sell guns to people who have the money for them. Why would your guy come in, like, who's a pretty weird dude, want to buy an AR-15 and a shotgun? He seems to have no idea about guns and a bag full of cash. Now, all of this kind of happens in the film. I don't know if that happened in reality, but it seems to stick pretty close to the real story. So if it seemed to, and I was sort of going back to earlier to come back to his parents, had they, kind of not thrown their hands up and sort of gone, not our responsibility, or taken more responsibility for their son. I'm not saying it was their fault necessarily, because who could foresee something like this happening? But it's sort of all these points of failure. It's like in have you ever seen Air Crash Investigation? I love that show. One of my favorite shows to watch in a plane, by the way, is Air Crash Investigation. Put it on your phone, on your tablet, just enjoy.
No headphones though.
No, a friend of mine says if there are survivors at the start of the episode, just click next. We don't want any of that. But if you watch one of those episodes, what usually happens with plane crashes is it's not one thing. It's not this thing broken that crashed. This thing broke, but at the same time, this other thing was broken, and the pilot was looking out the window, and someone had a bad day. It's a comedy. It's a series of small things that lead up to something big. If that makes sense.
Rube Goldberg machine of murder.
Kind of in a way. It's kind of like these are all little events. These are all things that broke, which meant that this happened. So it's not necessarily saying it's their fault. They should have done this. They're not saying, hey, the gun store owner should definitely have stopped this guy from buying guns. It's just saying, here are the small sliding doors moments almost, the small failures or bigger ones, including their parents, that have led to this man doing this unimaginably horrible thing.
Okay.
And maybe I'm probably doing a really bad job of explaining it, but it's I can't recommend it strongly enough. The cast is exquisite. For Caleb Landry Jones's performance, and for, like I said, just support a film that's doing something different.
Absolutely. Otherwise, we'll get Jungle Cruise. More on that next week.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. All right. Well, I think that actually rounds us off to the
I think it's just on the. We don't want to keep going. We got a little bit. It means we've still got more for next week. So you've got Jungle Cruise. You've got Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
We've got possibly the Eternals.
Hopefully, we'll see how we go. I have a new season. The latest season of American Crime Story has just wrapped up, and I'd love to bring everyone up to speed with what that was about.
Okay.
I got to play 20 minutes of Halo Infinite tonight.
Oh, the multiplayer, you mean?
You've got Game Pass, haven't you?
Yeah, but I'm bad at games.
Yeah, so am I. We can be bad at games together.
All right. Well,
I jumped into it's only the multiplayer is available right now. And I got in and I got absolutely pantsed. Absolutely penned over and spanked. Like, I'm terrible at these games, but it's kind of fun to jump in and try them out.
See, I just don't think I'll ever be able to beat my time playing The Division, where I just run through, instigate action, and everyone behind me would have to deal with it.
The other game, I think you might have had a look at this one as well, if I'm not mistaken, but I picked up a game during lockdown called Spiritfarer.
Yes, I played that, yeah.
We might even get some game content in next week if we have time.
Goodness me. Ladies and gentlemen, we spoil you. Welcome back. All of that jazz. We'll see how the video and everything records, because my video has been paused on my end for a long time, and it just looks like I'm doing very inappropriate Wakanda Forever or something.
You're moving at my end, so let's just hope we...
okay. Fingers crossed. But thank you so much for joining us again. Welcome back to all of you who listen to us on podcasts. Make sure you do pop over and just check us out live, because we will interact with you. We will talk to you. It would have been cool to have some other people talk about Spider-Man's new trailer and things like that. But it is, we are a long show. So, the podcast where you can stop and start and not actually have to look at our faces may be the better way to go. But
I have a face for radio. That's what I've been told.
So, yeah, as Travis already talked, our chain movie next week is going to be the classic Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is not on any of the legal streaming services here unless you want to rent it. We talked about the Spider-Man trailer, What If, Shang-Chi. We had our sponsors. We talked about Ordinary People, No Time to Die, Free Guy, and Nitram. I think that was a pretty good show, man.
I think that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone, if anyone does tune in or watch us later or listen to a podcast. I would echo the call to jump on and have a look at this live. We'll be live 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. It's probably about 6 a.m. everywhere else in the world, but who knows?
Yeah, what better way to wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. than have an Englishman and an Australian talk about dark, gloomy things.
That's what we do.
Yes. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.